Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. After thinking the matter over for some time, he finally sighed and said, "Nah, it's not worth even thinking about it. Things are great here in the Spirit Stream Sect." Suppressing the pain he felt in his heart, he put the medicinal pill away in his bag of holding. If he left, he would miss the Spirit Stream Sect too much. Now that he was in Heaven Dao Foundation establishment, everyone from the patriarchs to the servants treated him with the warmth of family. Most importantly, there were plenty of new outer sect disciples who didn't know him very well. Nor had he spent sufficient time in public on the North Bank. He would really be missing out on a lot if he left the sect now. In the days to follow, Bai Xiaochun spent time every day practicing cultivation. However, when he wasn't cultivating, he would clasp his hands behind his back and stroll through both the north and south banks, smiling like someone from the senior generation. He would often mysteriously appear in areas where the outer sect disciples gathered. At first, cries of excitement would fill the air, but soon, strange expressions would begin to appear on the faces of the outer sect disciples. Eventually, they realized that they were seeing Bai Xiaochun more than a dozen times every day. It didn't matter what they were doing, they would often look up to find Bai Xiaochun standing there, a faint smile of praise on his face. Eventually, they grew numb to what was happening, and the strange expressions grew even more common. The outer sect disciples weren't the only ones to experience such a thing. Inner sect disciples and even the elders were all annoyed to find that Bai Xiaochun, instead of tending to important affairs, would often stroll around and wait to be called Sect Uncle Bai. It was just like what had happened years ago. Thankfully, Bai Xiaochun was much more restrained than he had been before. After once again experiencing the sensation of being the center of attention, he decided to stay in his immortals cave on Mount Daoseed and concoct medicine. To cultivate the undying heavenly king, I need vital energy. Therefore, I need to concoct a Tier 4 medicinal pill. Bai Xiaochun's grand aspiration of becoming a master apothecary was what kept him so focused on medicine concocting. Furthermore, he had never forgotten what Li Qinghao had told him, that after he reached Foundation establishment, he should once again try to perfect his lightning detox grand magic. In the following days, lightning and thunder became common on Mount Daoseed, much to the astonishment of the Foundation establishment elders there. Disciples from the other mountain peaks saw the countless bolts of lightning descending upon the mountain, and were also shocked. People began to ask around, and before long, stories about Bai Xiaochun's previous antics began to spread again. Soon, everyone was talking about it, leading to gasps and expressions of shock. Sect Uncle Bai did something like that? I don't believe it. Heavens, did that really happen? Many of the disciples who weren't familiar with Bai Xiaochun had a hard time believing the stories. However, the frequency of the lightning didn't reduce by even a little bit. In fact, it increased. At the same time, black smoke began to rise from Bai Xiaochun's immortals cave, and before long, the legendary acid rain began to fall. Acid rain ran in rivulets down almost half of Mount Daoseed. Of course, Bai Xiaochun was concocting Tier 4 medicinal pills, to which Tier 3 pills couldn't even compare. Soon, the area affected by the acid rain grew, reaching both the south and north banks. Eventually, all 7 of the mountain peaks were affected. A nightmare had descended once again. Countless disciples looked around in shock as their garments slowly dissolved. Bai Xiaochun is concocting pills again. Can't he just let people live in peace? The South Bank had already gone through something like this before, so as soon as they realized the acid rain was coming, there was a bit of an uproar, but nothing too dramatic. However, the people from the North Bank had never experienced anything quite like it. Soon, howls of rage rose up, and the North Bank mountain peaks began to go mad. What's going on? What's happening? Heavens! I can't believe acid rain is falling. Wait a second, didn't I hear a story recently about acid rain? Screams and howls filled the North Bank as the disciples there descended into madness. The 4 peak lords and the elders were also furious, and soon found that the culprit was none other than Bai Xiaochun. Before Bai Xiaochun reached Foundation establishment, the disciples of both banks would most surely have formed a mob to go pelt him with stones. But now, all they could do was exchange dismayed glances. Despite their rage, Bai Xiaochun was not the same Bai Xiaochun that he had been before. He was now a Heaven Dao Foundation establishment expert, legacy echelon designate, and a Foundation establishment elder. A person like that was not someone who ordinary disciples could casually provoke. Even the elders could only stew in their frustration. As for the peak lords, they knew how much the prime elders valued Bai Xiaochun, and thus, could do nothing other than go to the sect leader and hope that he would see reason. When sect leader Zheng Yuandong heard their complaints, he smiled wryly. After all, the legacy echelon designate was someone very important. Sadly, Li Qinghao had already gone into secluded meditation, otherwise he might have been able to set Bai Xiaochun straight. Zheng Yuandong tried to persuade Bai Xiaochun that there was more to life than cultivation, and that he should go out of the sect to get some experience in life. After all, without tempering, not even immortal steel could be forged into an immortal sword. He even explained that as long as he stayed in the Eastwood continent, he would never be in much danger, but would still be able to gain experience. However, Bai Xiaochun merely shook his head and said that he really enjoyed life in the sect. With that, he immersed himself in his research, and the same madness that had once gripped the South Bank soon began to spread through the entire sect. However, just when it reached a boiling point, Bai Xiaochun suddenly stopped concocting pills. There he sat in his immortal's cave, sighing. His efforts at Tier 4 medicinal pills were all failures. No matter how he persisted, problems always cropped up. Maybe my skill in the Tao of medicine is too low. Trying to force the matter now won't do any good. If I want to concoct Tier 4 medicinal pills, I have to improve my skill in the Tao of medicine. Feeling enlightened, he went to visit Li Qinghao, but unfortunately, Li Qinghao was still trying to reach the gold core stage, and couldn't emerge from secluded meditation. Bai Xiaochun took out the frigid school medicine manual, but no matter how he examined it, it didn't make sense. It was as if he could understand the characters themselves, but the words and sentences they formed were completely unintelligible. If my skill in the Tao of medicine could be considered low level, then the frigid school medicine manual must be high level. I'm missing some fundamental understanding regarding the Tao of medicine. Although Bai Xiaochun was left scowling, the disciples of both the South and North Banks, the elders and peak lords and the Foundation establishment elders on Mount Deoseed were all sighing in relief. As usual, they had underestimated Bai Xiaochun. For the moment, he couldn't work on Tier 4 spirit medicine, but he could cultivate the Violet Chi Heavenspan incantation. Furthermore, at a certain point, the Violet Chi Heavenspan incantation, in combination with the protomagnetic powers of gravity and repulsion, delivered a burst of inspiration regarding his dream technique, the human controlling grand magic. I'm such an idiot. The human controlling grand magic doesn't actually need to directly control the opponent. If I figured out a way to control their clothing, I could control the movements of their body. Furthermore, I could rely on the protomagnetic powers of gravity and repulsion to do that instead of pure control power. The more he thought about it, the more excited he got. Eyes shining brightly, he rushed out of his immortal's cave. As he walked along, he ran into a lot of people, but none of them were appropriate to help confirm whether his theory was correct or not. Eventually, he left Mount Deoseed and headed toward Green Crest Peak. Suddenly, he saw a familiar face. Chen Fei, he said, eyes shining. Chen Fei was walking proudly down a path on Green Crest Peak, followed by two burly men who were fawning over him and showering him with flattery. Congratulations on completing the trial by fire to enter the inner sect, elder brother Chen. You're finally going to be an inner sect disciple, ha ha ha. From now on, elder brother Chen, you're in Green Crest Peak's inner sect. The whole world is at your fingertips. Next step, the heavens. Chen Fei stuck his chin up as he walked along, reveling in his pride. After all the years that had gone by, he had finally advanced from the outer sect to the inner sect. As he strutted along smugly, he was about to respond to the two men when he suddenly heard someone calling out his name. A twinge of displeasure ran through his heart. Snorting coldly, he looked around and said, "Everybody on Green Crest Peak calls me elder brother Chen. What blind fool dares to disrespect me by using my full name?" Seeing no one in the immediate vicinity, he subconsciously looked up into the air, and saw Bai Xiaochun flying toward him. It's Bai Xiaochun. Sect Uncle Bai. Chen Fei's scalp began tingling so hard it felt like it might explode. A piercing shriek escaped his lips, and all of his smugness and pride collapsed. The two burly men on either side of him also began to shake in anxiety and fear. Those two men were the same men who had ambushed Bai Xiaochun with Chen Fei all those years ago, only to be taught a harsh lesson in return. 1. Chen Fei and his friends tried to fight Bai Xiaochun in Chapter 39. Of course, as Bai Xiaochun's status in the sect grew, their fear of him also increased. That had been compounded by the fact that Qian Daijin ended up being suddenly sent out on a dangerous mission. He had never returned, and rumor had it that he had died outside the sect. The presumption, of course, was that Bai Xiaochun was behind it all, which left them even more terrified than before. Eventually, though, they came to believe that Bai Xiaochun had forgotten about them. Gradually, they relaxed, convinced that there would be no further negative ramifications. But now, Bai Xiaochun had come seeking them out, and the result was that their hearts were pounding in terror. Trembling, Chen Fei quickly clasped hand and bowed deeply. Disciple Chen Fei offers greetings, Sect Uncle Bai. Sect Uncle Bai, you are the most powerful person in the sect, a cultivator whose legend will be passed down through the ages, someone who will live as long as the heavens, invincible in the whole world. The two burly men also shouted similar words until their voices grew hoarse. Bai Xiaochun was shocked to find that Chen Fei really was so gifted at speaking. Looking very serious, he said, cut the crap. Do you really think Bai Xiaochun is the type of person who likes to be brown-nosed? However, despite the words coming out of his mouth, a gleam of approval could be seen in his eyes, and even a bit of encouragement. Chen Fei hesitated for a moment, but seeing that Bai Xiaochun seemed to be encouraging him to keep going, he proceeded, Sect Uncle Bai, I'm not flattering you, I'm just telling you how I really feel. Sect Uncle Bai, you're a Heaven Dao Foundation establishment expert and the legacy echelon designate. You're a future patriarch of the Spirit Stream sect. You'll naturally live as long as the heavens, and in the future will surely prove to be invincible in the world. Quit your jabbering, Bai Xiaochun said, waving his hand and looking very displeased. Chen Fei felt a bit sick to his stomach, but continued on with the flattery. Sect Uncle Bai, it's not just me who thinks this. All of the disciples are talking about it. Everyone is saying that Sect Uncle Bai is as righteous as the heavens. He's a genius among chosen, someone who crushes all others in his generation. He's a Qilin incarnate, and one of the most handsome people in existence. Bai Xiaochun listened on and felt wonderful. After a while, he felt bad about trying to test out the human-controlling grand magic on Chen Fei, so he simply stuck his chin up in the air, flicked his sleeve, and flew away. Chen Fei and his two friends breathed sighs of relief. As for the burly men, they looked at Chen Fei with more admiration than ever. Elder brother Chen, you definitely deserve to be regarded as brilliantly divine. If it weren't for you, we would have faced calamity this day. Wiping away the cold sweat on his brow, Chen Fei had to admit that he really had been thinking on his feet. Humph, you'd have a hard time finding anyone in the sect that understands Sect Uncle Bai better than me. Proud of himself, he led his two friends off into the distance. Bai Xiaochun scoured the south bank, but couldn't find anyone else to practice the human-controlling grand magic on. Next he went to the north bank. By that time it was late into the night. Unfortunately, he still hadn't found a suitable subject. Sighing to himself about how good-natured he was, he returned to Mount Daoseed. Then, as he was walking along a mountain path, he looked up and saw Shangguan Tianyu flying through the air, wearing the Taoist robe of an elder. As he flew along, he noticed Bai Xiaochun, but simply snorted inwardly and pretended not to see him. The bad feelings between the two caused a cold, arrogant glint to appear in his eyes as he prepared to fly on his way. When Bai Xiaochun saw the arrogant Shangguan Tianyu, old grievances rose up in his heart. Chuckling, he extended his right hand and mumbled something under his breath as he pointed his finger at Shangguan Tianyu. A tremor ran through Shangguan Tianyu as his Taoist elder's robe suddenly constricted around him. His face fell, and his cultivation base exploded with power as he attempted to stop the clothing from affecting his movements. As for Bai Xiaochun, he poured more power into his efforts. In the blink of an eye, Shangguan Tianyu's clothing became a battlefield. Then a boom echoed out, and Shangguan Tianyu staggered backward a few steps. As he did, his robe was shredded into pieces, drifting away in the wind to reveal his naked body. His jaw dropped. Bai Xiaochun's jaw also dropped. The jaws of nearby Foundation establishment elders also dropped. Shangguan Tianyu let out a piercing howl as he threw another robe on. Eyes bloodshot, hair in disarray, he raved, Bai Xiaochun. With that, he shot toward Bai Xiaochun, mind filled with only one thought: no matter what happened, he would take Bai Xiaochun down. He didn't even think about whether or not he was strong enough to do such a thing. In his mind, Bai Xiaochun was a walking disaster, and if he were left alive, the Spirit Stream sect would definitely be brought to ruin. Bai Xiaochun immediately fled. What's going on? How come it didn't work? When he saw how enraged Shangguan Tianyu was, he actually felt a bit bad, but before he could even explain, Shangguan Tianyu was bearing down on him with murderous intent. Sect nephew Shangguan, this was a misunderstanding, he shrieked as he sped along. A misunderstanding, I tell you. By that point, he was already back in his immortals cave. However, when Shangguan Tianyu heard the term, sect nephew, his rage burned even hotter. He stood outside the immortals cave, completely livid, howling in rage. Eventually, though, he could do nothing but grit his teeth and leave. Bai Xiaochun sat in his immortals cave racking his brains. A few days later, he slapped his thigh. I was thinking about it the wrong way. Controlling the clothing is definitely not a good idea. Clothing is weak, and can't withstand the force. Not unless it was made from jewels or something. The true human controlling grand magic is about controlling the smaller components of a person's body. For example, their skin, flesh, blood, and bones. When all of that is accomplished, then I'll truly have control power over my opponent. Unfortunately, my cultivation base isn't high enough yet. I need a much stronger foundation in control power. For now, I need to make some sort of device that has inherent control power built into it. His eyes began to shine brightly. The more he thought about the idea, the more it made sense. The next day, he scoured the sect for just such a device, but unfortunately, found nothing that worked. Just when he was starting to despair, he suddenly pulled out his proto-magnetic wings. After studying them for a moment, his eyes began to shine brightly. In the arcane pocket realm, I gained some enlightenment of proto-magnetic power. Now I can use a bit of repulsion power, as well as a slight gravitational force, to produce that illusory pearl. After some more thought, his right hand flashed with an incantation gesture, and he pointed out. Instantly, a stream of qi emerged from within the wings, which flowed out onto Bai Xiaochun's palm and transformed into an illusory pearl. Upon closer examination, it was possible to see two types of auras inside the pearl, one of them pushing away, and the other pulling in. Their balance formed a cycle that acted as a vessel. After a moment of thought, Bai Xiaochun's expression filled with determination. Spiritual power is the foundation for all cultivators. Control power comes when the violet qi heavenspan incantation takes spiritual power and fuses it into one's will. Bai Xiaochun attempted to do just that. Pouring his spiritual power into the violet qi heavenspan incantation caused its fluctuations to change. When those fluctuations entered his own will, it became control power, which he infused into the pearl. Time passed. A day later, Bai Xiaochun's face was pale, but his expression was one of excitement. Retracting his hand, he sat down to perform some breathing exercises. A month later, the result of Bai Xiaochun's madness was that a terrifying amount of control power had built up in the pearl. Only then did he finally stop. Looking at the pearl excitedly, he said, "This is definitely going to work. There's a shocking amount of control power built up in the pearl. Once it erupts out, that power will definitely be enough to drive my human controlling grand magic." Just when he was about to go test it out, he stopped in his tracks, thought for a moment, and suddenly didn't feel as confident. No, it's not ready yet. I need to add some more control power. Gritting his teeth, he sat down cross-legged. After spending 3 more months pouring power into it, the amount of control power contained in the pearl was hair-raisingly terrifying. There was so much that it spilled out of the pearl, distorting the air in shocking fashion. All of the objects within 30 meters of Bai Xiaochun were floating up into the air and emanating cracking sounds. Even the pebbles in the walls of the immortals' cave were affected. Eyes crimson, Bai Xiaochun cackled madly as he emerged from his immortals' cave. Bai Xiaochun's human controlling grand magic will finally make its debut in the world. Laughing uproariously, he searched the area around his immortals' cave, only to find that nobody was around. Even as he was looking around in confusion, he noticed several beams of light shooting through the air toward the summit of Mount Deocide. Apparently, the sect leader had called a meeting of the Foundation establishment elders, for reasons unknown. Puzzled, Bai Xiaochun flew up into the air. Soon he caught sight of the square outside of the sect leader's personal hall. A large number of Foundation establishment elders were gathered there, and all of them were conversing with each other in hushed tones. Somber expressions could be seen on their faces. Apparently, something big had occurred. What happened? Bai Xiaochun thought. He had been so focused on his human controlling grand magic that he hadn't paid much attention to his jade slips. Flying over to the group, he was just about to start asking questions, when 3 of the Foundation establishment cultivators about 30 meters away from him, one of whom was Lu Tinlei, suddenly looked over at him in shock. They had noticed Bai Xiaochun earlier, as well as his disheveled hair and strange appearance. As soon as he got close enough to them, tremors ran through their bodies, and they completely lost control of their cultivation base power. Energy surged out explosively, causing crushing pressure to weigh down, and simultaneously shredding their robes into pieces. Shivering, eyes bloodshot, they quickly put on new garments and simultaneously fell back. Enraged, they looked over at Bai Xiaochun, convinced that he was up to more shenanigans. "What are you doing, Bai Xiaochun?" However, even as the words left their mouths, Bai Xiaochun continued forward obliviously. At the same time, all of the Foundation establishment cultivators within 30 meters of him looked on with wide eyes as their clothing was also shredded. Before Bai Xiaochun could even react, dozens of Foundation establishment cultivators were robeless, including Shangguan Tianyu. Bai Xiaochun, damn it, what's he doing? The Foundation establishment cultivators burned with rage. Throwing new clothes on, they were about to storm over to Bai Xiaochun to teach him a lesson, when they realized that anyone who got within 30 meters of him would have their clothing destroyed. Terrified, they all backed up. Shocked, Bai Xiaochun retreated to the main gate of the hall, scalp tingling and heart thumping. He already knew that he had caused a major catastrophe again. Don't blame me, he said. It's this pearl. He nervously held the pearl up into the air, which caused rippling distortions to spread out for 30 meters in all directions. Bai Xiaochun appeared to be the only one unaffected. It was at this point that sect leader Zheng Yuandong heard the commotion outside, and stormed out through the gate with some of the prime elders. As soon as they appeared out in the open, they stepped into the danger zone surrounding Bai Xiaochun. No! Bai Xiaochun shrieked. Elder brother sect leader, prime elders. Get back! Eyes wide, he tried to throw the pearl in the opposite direction, but it was too late. Zheng Yuandong's clothing was instantly shredded to pieces and blown away by the breeze, leaving him standing there as shocked as a wooden chicken. The prime elders' once solemn faces completely changed when their clothing was destroyed. They tried to unleash power to stop it, but it did no good, and soon they were all standing there naked. Of course, it had nothing to do with the power of Bai Xiaochun's cultivation base, only the strange properties of the pearl. The clothing was not destroyed directly by Bai Xiaochun, but by the pearl. It wasn't his fault. As soon as the naked bodies of the sect leader and the prime elders were revealed, everything went deathly quiet. In the blink of an eye, Zheng Yuandong waved his hand, and a new robe appeared. However, the moment it settled down onto him, it was also shredded to pieces. Shrieking, Bai Xiaochun flew into the air to flee. He was already soaked with cold sweat at the thought of the calamity he had wrought. If he had only destroyed the clothing of his elder brother sect leader, it might not have been such a huge deal. After all, he was his junior brother. But the prime elders had also been affected. The blank looks in the eyes of those prime elders caused Bai Xiaochun's scalp to tingle on the verge of exploding. Bai Xiaochun! Zheng Yuandong howled, throwing on another set of clothing. As his voice boomed like thunder, rage burned in the eyes of the prime elders, and their cultivation bases erupted like volcanoes. All of them immediately flew toward Bai Xiaochun. Screaming, Bai Xiaochun prepared to flee at top speed. It wasn't on purpose. Shut up! Raged the prime elders, their voices deafeningly loud. They're trying to kill me. They're trying to kill me. This time, Bai Xiaochun really was afraid. He immediately pulled out the proto-magnetic wings and his golden crow sword, then unleashed all the power of his Heaven Dao Foundation establishment cultivation base to flee. All of the Foundation establishment cultivators were furious. Their anger had been building for some time thanks to Bai Xiaochun's torments, and to see the prime elders going after him left them laughing out loud. Shangguan Tianyu seemed especially worked up. Now the sect finally realizes what Bai Xiaochun is like. If this walking disaster stays in the sect, we'll all be driven to destruction. Hu Yunfei was in the crowd, sighing and smiling bitterly. Bai Xiaochun was scared out of his mind, and tears were welling up in his eyes. This time, he didn't feel wronged. He knew that he had been responsible for a major disaster, and now had no choice but to flee for his life. In the blink of an eye, he was off in the distance, heading toward the North Bank, with the prime elders hot on his tail. Almost as soon as he arrived, the North Bank disciples heard his miserable shriek. Gloating smiles appeared on their faces as they flew up into the air to see what was happening. However, as soon as they did, Bai Xiaochun whizzed by, and their clothing was shredded away. Their first reaction was shock, but then the screams rose up. Bai Xiaochun was on the verge of weeping. Prime elders, I'm sorry. Please don't kill me. I'm a prestige disciple, I have a Heaven Dao Foundation establishment cultivation base, I'm the legacy echelon designate. As for the prime elders, they were so mad they were a bit numb, and at the same time, astonished by Bai Xiaochun's speed. The North Bank instantly devolved into chaos. Wherever Bai Xiaochun went, anyone within 30 meters of him had their clothes completely destroyed in shocking fashion. Around this time, Bruiser was frolicking around when he looked up and suddenly got very anxious. He even threw his head back and howled, and from the sound of it, it was backed by power equivalent to the 9th or 10th level of chi condensation. Countless battle beasts on the North Bank responded by also throwing their heads back and howling. Their masters tried to stop them, but all of the affected battle beasts seemed to have been influenced by Bruiser. The entire group apparently wanted to fly up into the air and defend Bai Xiaochun from the prime elders. Before Bruiser could actually rally the battle beasts, a violet rope shot out from thin air and wrapped around the screaming Bai Xiaochun. Instantly, he was bound up, caught by one of the prime elders. Another of the prime elders carefully managed to take the pearl away, somehow keeping his clothes intact in the process. Then he kicked Bai Xiaochun hard on the rear end. "I've shed my own blood for the sect." Bai Xiaochun screamed. "I've performed meritorious service. How dare you fight back, you little brat?" Although the prime elder's expression was one of pure rage, Bai Xiaochun's terrified appearance had him almost laughing. Bai Xiaochun looked like he was about to cry. However, even as he shrieked miserably, he glanced down at the enraged Bruiser and gave him a look that indicated he shouldn't interfere. Bruiser seemed surprised, but he understood the look in Bai Xiaochun's eyes, and lowered his head. The prime elders noticed this, and were surprised. Then they recalled how even the patriarchs had taken a liking to this particular battle beast, and their eyes began to gleam with admiration at how it had attempted to protect its master. Now that's how Spirit Stream Sect battle beasts are supposed to act. The prime elders kicked Bai Xiaochun a few more times, then hauled him wailing back to Mount Deoseed. Upon their departure, silence reigned on the north bank, followed by a resounding cheer. However, the cheering faded away quickly as people recalled Bai Xiaochun's status in the sect. They knew that even though he would probably be punished, it wouldn't be too severely. Then they wondered what would happen in the future. As Bai Xiaochun grew more and more important, it was impossible to imagine what terrifying events might occur. When is Bai Xiaochun gonna grow up? What a fiendish devil. Soon, word spread that Bai Xiaochun's punishment was to sweep the pathways on Mount Deoseed every day for 3 months. During that time, he could often be seen with a broom, keeping Mount Deoseed completely free from dust. To him, it was pure torture. "Hey, this is a mountain. It's supposed to have dirt on it. How am I supposed to keep it clean?" Scowling on the verge of tears, he endured through the 3 months, then returned to his immortal's cave, where he sat next to his lake, staring up into the sky, looking completely miserable. "I didn't do it on purpose. I'm a prestige disciple. I'm the legacy echelon designate. I'm a Heaven Dao Foundation establishment expert. I'm the junior brother of the sect leader. I've performed meritorious service for the sect. I've shed my own blood. This is ridiculous. They even took my pearl away and won't give it back." Sighing, he patted his bag of holding and gritted his teeth. Whatever. I can't stay in the Spirit Stream Sect for the time being. I might as well go to the Bloodstream Sect and try to get that relic of eternal indestructibility. The Bloodstream Sect is the enemy of the Spirit Stream Sect anyway, so I can spend some time there concocting pills and working on my human-controlling grand magic. Having made his mind up, he went to talk to Zheng Yuandong the next morning. When Zheng Yuandong saw Bai Xiaochun approaching, his expression was grim. However, after hearing what he had to say, that he wanted to leave the sect to get some experience, his eyes went wide with disbelief. "Did you just say you want to leave the sect to get some experience?" "Yeah, you were right all along, elder brother sect leader. Maybe I am a piece of immortal steel. Without tempering, I'll never become an immortal sword. After some thought, I've decided to go out and get some experience." Bai Xiaochun even smacked his chest proudly to emphasize his words. "Elder brother, I know you don't want me to leave, but don't even try to persuade me to stay. I, Bai Xiaochun, have already decided." Before he could even finish speaking, Zheng Yuandong stepped forward and gripped him by the shoulders. "Excellent idea," he said excitedly. "I'm very proud of you, junior brother. If you want to go out and get some experience, you have my blessing." "Are you leaving now, huh?" Bai Xiaochun responded, a bit taken aback. "Well, I'm not really ready yet, I still need some." "What do you need, Xiaochun?" Zheng Yuandong interrupted, sounding very serious. "Just say the word. Spirit stones? Medicinal pills? Life-saving magical items? You're a Heaven Dao Foundation establishment expert, and also the legacy echelon designate. I can make a special exception to open the treasure storehouses and give you whatever you want. However, you have to remember that you can't leave the Eastwood continent. Of course, the Eastwood continent is a very big place, so there are plenty of places you can go." Having made his decision, he took Bai Xiaochun to the treasure storehouses to let him select some life-saving magical items. He also gave him plenty of spirit stones and medicinal pills. At the same time, he enthusiastically announced the matter to the rest of the sect. Later that afternoon, Bai Xiaochun stood outside the main gate, looking a bit dazed. It was only that morning that he had gone to talk to Zheng Yuandong about leaving to get experience. All of the preparations and formalities that needed to be handled had been quickly taken care of by Zheng Yuandong and the other elders. Currently, he was standing there with the sect leader and the 6 peak lords, as well as a large group of elders and inner sect disciples. It was quite a big affair. It almost seemed as if everyone from both the south and north banks were there, anxiously awaiting the moment when Bai Xiaochun actually left. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times. For some reason, the situation seemed familiar. Without even thinking about it, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, junior brothers and sisters, sect nephews and nieces, I shall miss all of you." The people in the crowd exchanged glances, and moments later, looks of sorrow appeared in their eyes. Clearly, they didn't want to part with Bai Xiaochun. Zheng Yuandong stepped forward, a kind look on his face as he said, "Xiaochun, you're the most outstanding disciple in the Spirit Stream sect. Your path lies ahead of you. Keep going forward. Step out into your future. Don't tell me you've forgotten what I told you about the Heavenspan Sea? You haven't forgotten about your path to living forever, have you? We cultivators can't be wishy-washy. Since you've decided to go out and get experience, you can't change your mind. Xiaochun, your elder brother will always support you." With that, he clasped Bai Xiaochun encouragingly on the shoulder. Soon, more voices rang out. "Yeah, that's right. Junior brother Bai, getting experience is a part of life. Just keep on going, and don't look back. Elder brother Bai, the reason cultivators can rebuke the heavens is because our hearts are large enough to hold all the lands within them. As soon as you go out, you'll be able to see the world for yourself. How could you not develop a heart big enough to contain all the lands? I'm certain that your heart will be able to hold the whole world. I really am gonna live forever." Bai Xiaochun thought, trembling. Eyes filling with determination, he looked around at everyone he knew and nodded. Then he turned and walked off into the distance. As soon as he disappeared over the horizon, the sorrow in the eyes of the crowd was replaced by joy. Zheng Yuandong was so excited he was trembling. This time, he's really gone. He's not just moved from the south bank to the north bank, he's actually left the sect. The heavens do have eyes. He's actually left to get experience. Is the devil really gone? I almost can't believe it. Is this real? Ha ha ha. I've been praying every day for this miracle, and now it's happened. The North Bank will finally have peace and quiet. The South Bank will no longer live a life of fear. A new age has begun. As their expressions of joy rose up, some people from the South Bank produced gongs and drums, and began to bang them loudly. Not willing to be outdone, the people from the North Bank did the same. That day was a day of happiness and rejoicing for the entire Spirit Stream sect. Off in the distance, Bai Xiaochun coughed dryly at the sound of the banging gongs and drums. A wistful look appeared in his eyes as he stuck his chin in the air and swished his sleeve. Looking more melancholy than ever, he said, "You still miss me, huh? Don't feel too bad, fellow Taoists, I'll be back soon." He took a deep breath, and the determination in his eyes grew stronger. "Bloodstream sect, I'm sorry to say that Bai Xiaochun is coming, and he's infiltrating you as a spy." With that, he sped off into the distance. The Bloodstream sect occupied the first branch among the 4 branches controlled by the Sky River Court. It was next to the Spirit Stream sect, with the actual border between the two being the mountains that had been occupied by the Luokan clan, which was colloquially known as the Luokan Mountains. After passing through the Luokan Mountains, one would be within the territory controlled by the Bloodstream sect. Bai Xiaochun hurried along, sighing the whole way. It was with mixed feelings that he passed through the area. On the one hand, he couldn't stop thinking about the dangers he had faced all those years ago, but on the other hand, he also kept thinking about Du Lingfei. If it weren't for the incident with the Luokan clan, he and Du Lingfei would never have gotten close. Du Lingfei would have continued to dislike him, much the way Zhou Xinqi still did. Likewise, Bai Xiaochun himself wouldn't have expressed himself to her the way he had. The betrayal of the Luokan clan had changed everything. Sighing, he passed the exact spot in the mountains where the Luokan clan had actually been located. By now, the place had mostly been swallowed up by the jungle, and there were almost no signs that the clan had even existed there to begin with. Some distance away was another clan that the Spirit Stream sect had raised up to replace the Luokan clan to guard the mountains. They had no idea that Bai Xiaochun was passing through the area. Of course, despite being a Foundation establishment cultivator, there were still some beasts in the area that even Bai Xiaochun didn't dare to provoke. As he traveled along, he once again was able to witness the wonders of the larger world around him, including some chaotic, primeval beasts. He also encountered some of the local cultivator clans, and came to understand why his elder brother, the sect leader, had called a meeting of the Foundation establishment cultivators some months before. The Profound Stream sect and the Pill Stream sect have gone to war. As he looked off toward the distant location where the Profound and Pill Stream sects were fighting, he recalled what Zheng Yuandong had told him about the war that had begun because of the Sky River Court. The war was certainly causing heaven and earth to shake violently. Bai Xiaochun couldn't help but wonder if hostilities would soon break out between the Bloodstream Sect and the Spirit Stream Sect. Half a month later, he left the Luokan Mountains and arrived at the border of the Blood Continent. Taking a deep breath, he produced the mask from his bag of holding and slowly put it onto his face. The instant it made contact with his skin, it melted into him, and his face twisted and distorted as it transformed into the face of a stranger. He looked quite handsome, albeit cold and arrogant. With the mask on, he didn't look warm and friendly like he usually did, but rather, fierce and sinister. Prodding his face here and there, he confirmed that he truly had transformed, then took off his Spirit Stream Sect robes and produced some of Night Crypt's clothes from his bag of holding. After donning them, he truly became Night Crypt. Even the techniques he cultivated were hidden by the mask, as well as his cultivation base. He was really an early foundation establishment, but anyone who assessed him would place him at the great circle of the 10th level of Qi condensation. He had completely and utterly assumed the identity of the original Night Crypt. Taking a deep breath, he strode forward into Bloodstream Sect territory. Being in no hurry, he made his way slowly and cautiously through the Blood Continent. As he did, he chatted some more with the soul of imposter Night Crypt and learned a lot more about the Bloodstream Sect. For one thing, the law of the jungle truly prevailed. Disciples were actually encouraged to fight amongst each other. It was the same outside of the sect, too. The entire Blood Continent was a violent and deadly place. For Bai Xiaochun to return to the Bloodstream Sect as Night Crypt would be very simple. According to what imposter Night Crypt told him, of the disciples of the sect who were teleported out of the fallen sword world to random locations on the Blood Continent, some would have returned directly to the sect, but others would have holed up to recover from their injuries before going back. After all, returning to the sect in an injured state would likely be more dangerous than just staying outside. When Bai Xiaochun heard that, even more fear rose up in his heart. The Bloodstream Sect seemed like a truly terrifying place. However, the enticement of the relic of eternal indestructibility, as well as the safety provided by the mask, ensured that he simply gritted his teeth and continued on with his plan. As he traveled, he took in the sights on the Blood Continent. Everything was a reddish-brown color, as though it had been stained with blood. Not even imposter Night Crypt was sure why that was. Apparently, it had always looked like that. Even the plants were very aggressive in nature. Bai Xiaochun encountered quite a few such aggressive plants along the way. Some of them he simply destroyed, others he fled from. It took 2 months before he actually reached the Bloodstream Sect itself. Much like the Spirit Stream Sect, the Bloodstream Sect was located right on the Heavenspan River. Although imposter Night Crypt had explained what the sect looked like, now that Bai Xiaochun could actually see it with his own eyes, his jaw dropped, and he even began to tremble. He was completely and utterly shaken. The Spirit Stream Sect's Mount Deoseed stretched across the entire river like a bridge, connecting the 7 mountain peaks of the south and north banks. The Bloodstream Sect was very different. Shockingly, it took the shape of an enormous, blood-colored hand. The gargantuan blood hand stretched right up out of the Heavenspan River, palm down, as if it were clawing up toward the heavens. The size of it was difficult to describe with words. The 5 fingers of the hand were like enormous mountain peaks, each one of them roughly the same size as Mount Deoseed. As for the rugged thumb, it was surrounded by a blood mist that made it impossible to see clearly. It was impossible to say how long the hand had existed, its dusty, rubble-strewn surface battered by the winds. Close up, it was only possible to see the 5 enormous mountain peaks stretching up. However, from a distance, it was also possible to see that beneath the hand was a shocking, blood-colored arm. Bai Xiaochun's eyes were as wide as saucers. Anyone who saw a sight like this would likely come to the conclusion that some shocking giant existed within the Heavenspan River, a giant who, in the moments before its death, reached up begrudgingly to try to rip apart the heavens. And yet, even as it had done so, its arm solidified and never moved again. As long as the hand remained, a towering mountain peak, then the will of that giant would remain. The mountain peaks were covered with blood-colored vegetation, as well as numerous buildings. Beams of light could be seen flying back and forth. Clearly, the mountain peaks were home to countless individuals, whose murderous auras caused the sky above to darken. This was the home of the Bloodstream Sect. The Bloodstream Sect, Bai Xiaochun said, taking a deep breath. So powerful. Seeing it all with his own eyes only further impressed upon him the power and resources at the disposal of the Bloodstream Sect. No wonder the Bloodstream Sect people are so brutal. Their sect is actually built on the arm of a corpse. In fact, imposter Night Crypt even said that the Bloodstream Sect techniques are almost all derived from the arm itself. Bai Xiaochun's mind reeled as he got closer to the enormous arm. As he neared, he could see that the mountain peaks even had waterfalls of blood streaming down from various locations. Closer examination revealed that the hand apparently absorbed water from the Heavenspan River, which then seeped out of various cracks and crevices within the arm. As it did, the golden water was transformed into a bright red color. That red liquid was also a fundamental element of the cultivation of the bloodstream sect. Spirit blood, Bai Xiaochun thought, his heart thumping. He immediately thought back to the first introduction Imposter Nightcrypt had given him regarding the bloodstream sect. The bloodstream sect was structured in a way similar to the spirit stream sect. However, there were also some fundamental differences. They had servants, outer sect disciples, and inner sect disciples. However, instead of legacy echelon cultivators, the bloodstream sect had bloodmasters. Generally speaking, the sect rankings were very strictly enforced. Servants weren't allowed onto the upper forearm, they lived on lower forearm, which was considered to be outside of the bloodstream sect itself. That was where the population was greatest, and the area was packed tightly with buildings that were organized in concentric rings. Only outer sect disciples could leave that area and step onto the upper forearm, and only inner sect disciples qualified to live on the back of the hand itself. With the exception of the thumb, the mountain peaks that were the fingers of the hand were divided into the lower finger and the upper finger. The lower finger was occupied by Foundation Establishment cultivators. Those in the Mortal Tao Foundation Establishment stage were called Dharma Protectors, and those in the Earthstring Foundation Establishment stage were the Elders. Only one person qualified to live on the upper finger, and that was the Grand Elder of that peak. Grand Elders were the equivalent of the Spirit Stream sect's peak lords. Of course, considering that there were fewer mountain peaks than in the Spirit Stream sect, it was a position reserved for only the most extraordinary of individuals. After the upper finger was the fingertip. From the moment the bloodstream sect had been founded in ancient times, each mountain peak had a bloodmaster. That was the only person who qualified to occupy the fingertip. The bloodmasters were the focus of the entire sect, and were among the most powerful people in the entire sect, excluding certain people who resided on the thumb. They were as powerful as the sect leader, and qualified to give orders to the elders of the mountain peaks. All bloodstream sect disciples dreamed of becoming the bloodmaster of a mountain peak. Each successive generation only had one bloodmaster per mountain peak at any given time. The thumb was the only place with no bloodmaster. The blood mist which surrounded it ensured that it was a restricted area. That was where the bloodstream sect's patriarchs and prime elders resided. Only people in the gold core stage could go there. When a bloodmaster advanced to the gold core stage, he or she would become a blood ripper and move to the enormous thumb. The blood rippers occupied a position higher than prime elders, with power second only to the patriarchs. The lowest position on the thumb was occupied by the sect leader, who was responsible for the general administration of the sect. As he got closer and closer to the bloodstream sect, Bai Xiaochun once again reviewed the information he knew. 5 mountain peaks. The thumb is called Ancestor Peak. The first finger is called Corpse Peak, the middle finger is Middle Peak, the ring finger was called Nameless Peak, and the smallest finger, the pinky finger, is called Lesser Marsh Peak. 1. A quick note about the names, because there is some minor wordplay involved. The word for corpse sounds similar to the word describing the index finger. Both are pronounced shi. In Chinese, the ring finger is called the nameless finger, so I chose to keep the Chinese version of that name for the mountain. The lesser marsh is an acupuncture point on the tip of the pinky finger. As far as the thumb and ancestor goes, I don't think there is any wordplay, although the word ancestor does sort of rhyme with the character for thumb. Corpse Peak is known for refining corpses, Middle Peak focuses on blood swords, Nameless Peak is famous for gargoyles, and Lesser Marsh Peak is devoted to devil blood body refinement. Bai Xiaochun couldn't help but recall the bloodstream sect disciples he'd encountered in the fallen sword world. He had seen them control the vicious gargoyles. Xu Zhaoshan had worked with various corpses, and Song Ke had fought him with a blood sword. He had even seen some of the devil blood body refinement of disciples who were obviously from Lesser Marsh Peak. As of this moment, the bloodstream sect had already left a deep impression on Bai Xiaochun's mind. However, what happened next left him completely and utterly shaken. As he neared the enormous hand, he stepped past a certain point, and his face flickered as his undying live forever technique suddenly stirred with intense desire. At the same time, Bai Xiaochun could sense that the enormous hand was somehow calling out to him. That summoning seemed unprecedentedly intimate. How is this possible? He thought, his mind reeling. As of this moment, all of his hesitation and anxiety vanished, and an extremely familiar sensation filled his mind and heart. It took some time for Bai Xiaochun to calm himself down. After he did, he continued on toward the sect itself. Soon, beams of light could be seen flying around near him, all of them bloodstream sect disciples, as well as Foundation establishment elders and Dharma protectors. The Foundation establishment cultivators all radiated powerful murderous auras and flew with incredible speed. They seemed domineering, rude, and completely headstrong. Everywhere they went, the inner sect disciples bowed their heads and clasped hands respectfully, not daring to show the least bit of disrespect. One Foundation establishment cultivator apparently thought Bai Xiaochun was in his way, so he waved his sleeve, sending a powerful gust of wind against him. Thankfully, Bai Xiaochun was very quick on the uptake, and immediately pretended to be blasted off to the side. He even managed to cause some blood to ooze out of the corners of his mouth. The Foundation establishment cultivator completely ignored him as he passed on by. Other inner sect disciples in the area barely seemed to notice. Further down on the arm, where the servants lived, the servants would occasionally look up into the air at the inner sect disciples and Foundation establishment cultivators, their expressions those of complete awe. So overbearing, Bai Xiaochun thought. At first, it didn't seem possible that the entire sect could be this way, but he quickly reminded himself that he was in the bloodstream sect, and flew along toward the hand itself. As he neared, he saw a shimmering, blood-colored light that was clearly a spell formation. When he passed through it, it flickered, but did nothing to block his way. A moment later, he was inside the spell formation and on the hand. Passed the first test, he thought, taking a deep breath. The light he had just passed through was the bloodstream sect's defensive spell formation, which would immediately detect anyone who wasn't a disciple of the sect. The back of the hand was huge. Bai Xiaochun quickly realized that it was actually about as large as the south and north banks of the spirit stream sect put together. That only served to further his understanding of how powerful the bloodstream sect was. Only inner sect disciples were allowed onto the back of the hand. Outer sect disciples could not enter without an authentication device. If they tried to, they would be severely punished. The lightest punishment for such an offense was a flogging, with more serious violators having a limb severed. The punishments were brutal, but that was how the twisted bloodstream sect operated. The differences between the levels were strictly enforced. Bai Xiaochun had been nervous at first, but after reaching the hand itself, and feeling the intimate connection between it and his undying live forever technique, he felt increasingly shaken. How could this be possible? He still almost couldn't believe what he was feeling. However, he soon had to acknowledge a shocking truth. This hand cultivated the undying live forever technique. More precisely, beneath the surface of the Heavenspan River was a giant who had indeed cultivated the undying live forever technique. Clearly, that giant had reached an extremely high level, which meant that the skin on the hand and arm was actually undying skin. From the cracks and crevices that now existed in that undying skin, it was possible to see what appeared to be soil, which was the giant's undying flesh. Even further down, in a location it was not possible to see, were the bones, which were undying bones. However, what was most shocking to Bai Xiaochun was that the blood waterfalls which poured down from the 5 mountain peaks represented the highest realm of the Undying Codex, Undying Blood. Heavens! The bloodstream sect is built on the arm of a giant who cultivated the undying live forever technique. Furthermore, the techniques they cultivate were obviously passed down by the earliest members of the bloodstream sect, and were based on the arm itself. That means that their techniques all stem from the same undying live forever technique that I cultivate. Based on what he knew, the first volume of the undying live forever technique was not very rare. Many sects had it. However, because it was so difficult to cultivate, few people ever succeeded with the undying gold skin. Fewer people, if any, could have gone beyond that to accomplish what Bai Xiaochun had in breaking the first shackle of mortality. In fact, it was highly likely that nobody in the entire bloodstream sect actually knew about the relationship between the blood hand and the undying live forever technique. Bai Xiaochun felt completely confident that only someone who had undying gold skin and had also broken through the first shackle of mortality would be able to sense the call of the hand. He knew that his conjectures might not be completely accurate, but he was confident that as he came to understand more about the bloodstream sect, he would be able to get answers to his questions, perhaps even first-hand verification. No wonder the blood sphere that Song Ke used in the Fallen Sword world felt so familiar. The reason why the exploding blood sphere Song Ke had used against him felt so familiar was because it was actually made from undying blood. It was only after reaching Foundation establishment that Song Ke had been able to forcibly unleash that special magic of the bloodstream sect. That's also why all of the bloodstream sect disciples in general seemed so familiar. Now it all makes sense. Mind reeling with shock, he followed imposter Night Crypt's instructions, going to the Internal Affairs Bureau to get an identity jade pendant and record his return to the Bloodstream Sect. As he approached, a beam of light shot toward him, which transformed into an old man. He had a Foundation establishment cultivation base, and when he looked Bai Xiaochun up and down with cold eyes, Bai Xiaochun immediately got nervous. Clasping hands respectfully, he quickly inquired of imposter Night Crypt, and learned that this old man was the elder in charge of the Internal Affairs Bureau. Disciple Night Crypt offers greetings, Elder Han. What took you so long to get back? Elder Han asked coolly. Disciple was seriously injured, he replied cautiously. I found a place to hole up and recuperate, and only just recently felt up to returning. After a moment of thought, he slapped his bag of holding and produced a rather large collection of spirit stones, which he placed in front of Elder Han. Elder Han, I got these in the Fallen Sword world. Please, take them. I hope you can be a bit flexible with me for returning late. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times. Elder Han's eyes went wide, but a moment later he waved his sleeve, and the spirit stones disappeared. Looking at Bai Xiaochun again for a moment, he nodded. A few of you took your time coming back. Well, now that you're here, focus on your cultivation. You'll get another chance to reach Mortal Dao Foundation establishment, eventually. Very well, be off now. Bai Xiaochun immediately took his leave. Elder Han watched him leave, musing to himself that this Night Crypt seemed to have learned a thing or two in the Fallen Sword Abyss. Alright, since he's gotten a bit smarter, I won't make things harder for him. He really should receive 10 lashes for coming back late. Turning, Elder Han vanished. Imposter Night Crypt was also taken aback. The way Bai Xiaochun so casually bribed Elder Han caused him to gasp. All of a sudden, he realized that Bai Xiaochun seemed very well suited to life in the Bloodstream Sect. Bai Xiaochun walked along in the sect, marveling at everything he saw around him. Unfortunately, everyone was very cold and indifferent, and stuck to themselves as they hurried along. Many had vigilant looks on their faces, as if they were always on guard. On 4 or 5 occasions along the way, he saw 2 disciples engaged in fierce fighting, apparently struggling over medicinal pills. Murderous auras raged as they seemed intent on taking each other's lives. Audiences often gathered to watch such conflicts, but everyone also kept an eye out in case someone attacked them. He saw one person coughing up blood so badly it seemed shattered internal organs might come out. The Spirit Stream Sect really is way better than this, Bai Xiaochun thought. Everyone gets along there. It's so wonderful. The Bloodstream Sect is so dangerous. One slip of the tongue and you might get attacked. He walked along feeling very nervous. Thankfully, Night Crypt wasn't very well known in the sect, and his cultivation base was only in the great circle of the 10th level of Qi condensation. Nobody took the initiative to attack him, a trend he encouraged by looking as fierce as possible. Just as he was almost at Night Crypt's Immortals cave, he passed a group of 5 female disciples. One of them, a tough-looking big-boned girl, caught sight of him and then hurried over, accompanied by the giggling of her companions. Night Crypt, the girl said in a loud, hoarse voice. Bai Xiaochun turned in shock to look at the unfamiliar young woman. She was stocky, with a pockmarked face, and was walking toward him with swaying hips, and eyes that gleamed with what appeared to be deep desire. Do I know you? Bai Xiaochun asked. You naughty devil, she said, glaring. Don't pretend you don't know who I am. Come here and give me a smile. Chuckling, she reached out and stroked Bai Xiaochun's cheek. Her action and her chuckle caused Bai Xiaochun to gasp and take a step back. Well, the girl continued. A little trip to the Fallen Sword Abyss and you already forgot about me? Hurry up and get back to my Immortals cave. I have plenty of medicinal pills for you. The stocky girl licked her lips and took a step forward as if she planned to drag him to her Immortals cave. Bai Xiaochun's scalp was tingling so hard it felt like it might explode. Flicking his sleeve, he blocked her path. Don't you touch me, he cried. I see how it is, Night Crypt. How dare you? HPMH. Just wait and see what happens when you come crawling back to me. Giving him an angry glare, she turned and stalked off. Bai Xiaochun finally breathed a sigh of relief, simultaneously asking imposter Night Crypt who the girl was. Senior, please don't be angry, was the hasty reply. She's just a girlfriend of mine in the sect. Bai Xiaochun almost couldn't believe it. Girlfriend? You have really strange taste. Night Crypt was actually very good looking, albeit somewhat cold. Bai Xiaochun almost couldn't believe that he would be in a relationship with the husky girl. Senior, there's something I never mentioned, imposter Night Crypt said, sounding like he was about to cry. After I became an inner sect disciple, my cultivation went really slowly, and I needed a lot of medicinal pills. I really had no other choice. Elder sister son is from one of the cultivator clans, and has access to lots of pills. I didn't have any other option than to get on her good side. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.